the neck represents, the head and neck represent the largest concentration of our senses. And what happens is I find that people that feel they have no control in their life, or people that feel they need to be in constant control of their life, this is the last vestige of it.
Ooh. And in fact, Luann Overmeyer used to refer to the neck as the control tower.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
That is
Exactly.
very good.
And in a sense, it represents your concentrated point of view. So what I find is that before you start trying to move stuff, it's good to say just put a little Barry White on the box, have some hot chocolate and some cherries and some flowers, and say a slow howdy before you start moving stuff around, as opposed to the police work before Miranda, bust doors, kick ass, take names, kill everything, and let God sort it out kind of approach. Here we go. Now I'm starting to feel a little softening, so I can actually get a better register of like the neck and being able to start to work with it. Oh yes, there we go. Now the neck is actually starting to fall into my hands, and now I think she said, "Okay, we're ready to play." So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just sort of get a sense of the individual vertebrae. I'm going to come up to the top of the neck, and I'm just going to see what a little bit of rotation feels like from side to side, one vertebrae at a time. I'm not liking that. Okay, so the first vertebrae really likes going to the left. Second vertebrae, not liking left, likes the right. Third vertebrae is left and right. Okay, so we can actually have, but still a little bit to the left. And fourth is also to the left. Fifth to the left. And there's a change in the pattern here at the sixth. So what I'm going to be, remember we did our little exercise last night about focusing on not so much the one that's the most restricted, but the place that seems to have the vast movement. I'm going to start there, which seems to be, for her, it's right here about C3 in rotation. And what's a little different here is what I'm going to do is I'm dealing with rotation, but I'm dealing with one vertebrae at a time, and I'm directly on the vertebrae. And what I'm going to do is I'm finding that marvelous little spot that seems most, this is too far, this is not too far enough, this is the Goldilocks spot, this is just right. And this time, instead of going and compressing from the head and trying to move the head around, remember the exercise we did before with the neck when we all had the person on the pillow and she just pulled up from underneath? Well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the vertebrae underneath the place I want to be, and I'm going to compress that vertebrae up underneath into the vertebrae I'm palpating. And I'm just going to wait until you get your, there it is, there's my little rebound.
Which vertebrae are you using to
So, I'm here holding, I have torque rotation. In this case for her, the vertebrae that moved the greatest and had the most fluid movement was her third vertebrae. I moved it into the position of greatest ease. I came to the fourth vertebrae and compressed up underneath the third vertebrae.
Okay. Great.
Did you get that? Did you get that? Okay. So now, all of a sudden, by starting with that place, I have reduced, think of that as almost like a general release for that pattern. I have just gotten a lot more mobility. Suddenly, the first vertebrae, which didn't like going to the left, now goes to the left and to the right. Still a little problem here at number 2. Something there, but it seems to be more into extension. But I now have pretty much cleared out most of the rotation in her neck with that one move.
Well, Lynn's body.
In Lynn's body, yeah, exactly. In Lynn's body, I've cleared out most rotation with that. It may require you to do several other vertebrae. So you can go up or down from that point and check out and see which ones need to be talked to after that, and use exactly the same approach.
So again, you moved it into the optimal position
Yes,
first.
it's
and
classic
then-
Ortho-Bionomy. I moved it to the most comfortable place. The only difference here is instead of compressing from the head down, I compressed up from the vertebrae to the vertebrae on top of it. So in other words, if this was the vertebrae I was working with, Andrea, this vertebrae I'm working with, when I'm ready to find the perfect position, I compress up from the vertebrae underneath it was my compression. Got it? So what that means, I have a really much more direct compression without being without having to go through the curvature of the neck, which is designed fundamentally to be a shock absorber and to displace force. And I had a direct contact from vertebrae to vertebrae, which means I didn't have to use bigger compression through the skull. It's easy to feel the compression. Does that make sense? Okay. So right now, that feels good. Let's check, because I'm curious about it now. I'm going to check flexion and extension. So I'm cupping her head right now. I'm just going to roll her head up into extension. So I'm right up there in that space between the skull and C1. And she really likes this. Not so much. It's not bad, but it's not as much as she really likes extension. I'm just going to go down and do the same thing. I'm going to just check the extension. So I'm working down the spine, checking and rolling to see which the spine likes the most. I'm going to look again for that most comfy spot in this range of motion. So that's very nice. That's nice too. Not as. And also, yeah. That's pretty good. And, okay. Nope. Nope. I'm doing flexion at the moment. Now, flexion here, how's that?
All right.
Not very fond of it.
Didn't really like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I just want to check. I'm just checking my results. So right now, the place that seemed to be get me the most amount of extension seemed to be right at C1. So I'm going to use my finger like a fulcrum. I'm just going to place these guys right in that space between the skull and the C1. And I'm going to let the head fall back. I'm coming right underneath to grab C2, pulling up on C2 to compress into C1.
Just grab the transverse. Work from there. Where are you grabbing?
I'm grabbing the transverse.
Okay.
Or between the transverse and I'm actually near the transverse. I'm actually on the edge of the laminar groove because I'm just, for whatever reason, there's a natural perch for her there. Oops.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we got more.
She
Yeah.
We got more action.
Much more.
actually
Much
she's
more
more
action.
balanced now.
Yeah.
Less extension.
And I'm feeling more something interesting happening, and it's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll come back to that point later on. What I'm feeling here at
6, 7.
5 and 6.
Oh, 5, 6.
5 and 6, the spinous process is going posteriorly. So it's actually heading down, so it's actually sticking out. So I'll deal with that as a separate situation. And so we've done rotation, we've done flexion, extension. Obviously, if we were dealing with a situation where we need to do flexion, boom, you could just, at the point, stabilize the vertebrae and move the head forward on that point, pull up. So I'm pinching here, moving the vertebrae at that break. And what I usually do is with my fingertip, is I usually just squeeze up on the spinous process of the vertebrae underneath it. Yeah, it just sort of naturally falls into a groove there. Now, Okay, let's check our side to side. This way. Or you like that guy?
Yeah, I think I like to the right more.
Okay, yeah.
My neck's not usually like this.
Exactly.
I don't know why it is.
And so this guy, yes. I'm on the second one. This guy, no.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
Better on the left.
Okay, boom. Yep. So what I'm getting here is there's like one guy that's going this way, everybody else is going that way.
Weird.
So in this case, at C1, her head wants to go this way. Everybody, the rest of the way down, wants to go to the opposite side. So I'm going to go to, and in point of fact, as good as that is, the place that goes the best, something changed. The place now that actually, where she gets the most amount of lateral flexion is right here, about C4. So, boom, lateral flexion. Again, I'm going to the vertebrae underneath. My thenar eminence has her head sort of just braced in this position. Here it comes. Boom. Okay.
Because everybody's structure is a little bit different, you sort of grab on what's comfortable.
Yeah.
Don't have to get so technical.
No.
And the compression, the pressure, I've done similar stuff and I use a lot of compression, but I'm not sure what kind of compression.
That
Does it vary?
spongy place,
Okay.
the basics, that spongy place. So that place, pretty much if their eyes start to shoot up, you're probably compressing too much. And if they're just laying there wondering what you're doing, you're probably compressing too little. Again, back to the Goldilocks principle.
Thank you. For waking me up.
Yeah, it's that wonderful spongy place between nothing and bone to bone. Okay. Now, I have a little situation down here. Let's see if it changed. And I got one of them, but didn't get the other one. Again, we have that vertebrae where the spinous process is going towards the table. It's jutting out this way. It seems to be locking, the full flexion and extension of the spine there. So what I'm going to do is, it wants to come to the table, so I'm going to help it do that. I'm going to physically pinch the spinous process, so basically anchoring it where it is, and I'm going to move all the vertebrae above it. So I'm just going to do this sort of teeter-totter. And I come to that one magical little spot. Boom. Boop. And then just...
You sort of have your fingers spread so you're doing a teeter-totter?
Nope. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I'm pinching the spinous process, and I'm just sliding my hand underneath to raise the vertebrae above it. So what happens is I want this to go down to the table. So instead, I'm raising the watermark.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So that position accentuates that pattern.
So you're above it.
Exactly. I'm above it in this case. And that. Ooh. And hello.
And sorry to be a little slow here. Why are you above it?
Well, because these vertebrae move easier. I'm really low on the spine now. So these vertebrae, because now I'm into the shoulder and near the ribs. So
Just
these guys above it are much easier for me to lift.
Okay.
Yep. So I have more mobility.
Understood.
That's okay. Understanding is good. Okay.